It began the night I stopped believing in silence. There were sounds the human ear was never meant to hear. Soft, rhythmic, like fingernails grazing the walls from the other side of the world. I had left the camcorder running, a cheap Sony model from the early 2000s, the red light blinking like a heartbeat in the dark. When I played it back, the camera showed something standing behind me, motionless, almost human, until it blinked without eyelids. The air in my apartment never felt still again. The scent of mold and dust was cut by something metallic, faintly sweet, like blood dried into the walls. I kept telling myself it was a trick of low light, of VHS static, of exhaustion. But sometimes, in the reflection of my screen, I saw robes, dark, draped, and the outline of a hat no one in this century should wear. It moved differently than anything I'd seen. Not walking, not floating, more like being pulled forward by invisible strings, its joints stiff and soundless. I remember pausing the tape and zooming in until the image warped, yet the thing remained perfectly sharp. Skin gray as cold ash, nails long enough to scratch eternity, and the eyes, God, the eyes. Black holes that didn't reflect light but devoured it whole. When I told my friends about it, they laughed. We'd been drinking, half bored, scrolling late-night forums about haunted urban legends. Slenderman, Bloody Mary, Jiangshi. Real sightings. Someone dared me to film a Jiangshi Summoning Ritual from a Forgotten Angel Fire page. It sounded absurd. Exactly the kind of viral hoax that thrived in those days. I didn't believe any of it until the ritual worked. All it required was a mirror, a candle, and a drop of blood. Prank. We filmed it in my grandfather's old house, the one that smelled like rain and incense. While the others laughed in the background, the instructions said to invite it across the veil, to whisper a name that wasn't supposed to be spoken. I still remember the flicker of the candle bending toward the mirror, as though the flame was being sucked in. When I opened my mouth to laugh, the words didn't come out. The air grew heavy, thick with humidity, though every window was open. My reflection didn't move when I did. I blinked, and it didn't. The laughter behind me turned hollow, as though the sound came from far away, from inside the walls. And then, for 1 second too long, my reflection smiled after I stopped. We shut off the camera. The room felt wrong, stretched, warped, as if gravity had shifted. My friend Daniel said his phone screen went black and wouldn't turn on again. I thought it was a coincidence, until I looked down at my wrist and saw 3 scratches, clean and precise, each one perfectly parallel. I didn't remember feeling them, but I remembered the smell, the metallic sweetness, like old blood. The next morning, the footage was gone. The entire file was corrupted. Nothing but static and flickers of white robes gliding through the dark. The timestamp glitched between years, 1984, 2001, 2025, and somewhere in between. I heard a voice whispering through the playback. You brought it back. I laughed it off for days, until the dreams began. I dreamt of narrow hallways flooded ankle-deep with water, the floorboards creaking under unseen weight. I dreamt of breathing that wasn't mine. Sometimes I'd wake to find condensation dripping down my mirror, though the room was dry. And once, just once, I saw handprints on the glass. Long fingers, pressed from the inside. Daniel stopped answering my calls. He'd posted something online. A blurry photo of his ceiling with words scrolled above. It's standing there again. The next day, his account was deleted. I went to his apartment. The door was unlocked, the floor covered in salt as if he'd tried to ward something off. His camcorder lay on the table, still recording. The screen showed nothing but static and the faint outline of a hat. I remembered the first time I smelled it again, that faint metallic sweetness. I followed it to the hallway mirror, the same one from the ritual. My reflection looked pale, too pale, as if light couldn't cling to me. I touched the glass, and it felt warm. From the other side, a hand pressed back, the nails scraping slow, deliberate lines. I stepped away, but the hand didn't vanish. It followed me. That night, the lights flickered until the bulbs burst one by one. My answering machine played messages I didn't remember recording. My own voice, whispering words in a dialect I didn't understand. When I tried to play them again, te waragani, every sound in the room seemed to breathe the hum of the refrigerator, the whir of the fan, the rhythm of something waiting. I began keeping the lights on 24/7. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its face in fragments, pale, featureless, with lips that never moved but whispered in my mind. My neighbor said she saw a figure outside my window, unmoving, as if nailed to the earth. She described its robes, its stiffness, the way the night seemed to recoil around it. I didn't tell her that my apartment is on the 3rd floor. People started avoiding me. The static followed wherever I went on the radio, my TV, even the hum of fluorescent lights in the grocery store. It always carried a faint undertone of breathing, slow and uneven. Sometimes, when I looked into screens, my reflection lagged. Not by seconds, by days. The me I saw blinked slower, older, tired. I went back to my grandfather's house, searching for answers. His old journals mentioned a corpse that hops, cursed by breath withheld. He'd written of a night during the war when villagers buried the dead standing upright, fearing their souls would rise if they laid them down. If you stare too long, he wrote, you invite their stillness into your blood. I remember the ink on that page was smeared, as if written in panic. That's when I found the photo, a faded Polaroid of my grandfather beside a shadow. Not a person, not exactly. The outline wore Qing robes, the face a blur, and Benedeth trees bent away as if trying to escape. On the back, in his handwriting, it never rots. It only waits. 4 days. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence. But then, I started finding black nails on my floor. Thick, curved, too long to belong to any living creature. Each one left a faint imprint in the wood, as if they'd been dragged there. I swept them away, but the next morning, there were more. And sometimes, I'd hear them tapping against my walls from inside. One night, I turned on the camcorder again. The tape rolled, grainy and unsteady, pointed at my reflection. I whispered, "Show me." For a moment, nothing. Then the candle beside me flickered, and behind my reflection, the robes appeared heavy, wet, breathing. I saw its hand rise, stiff as wood until its nail pressed against my throat from the other side of the glass. The camera fell. I don't remember screaming. The recording ended in static and a faint hum like chanting, though I was alone. When I played it back later, there was a frame, just one, showing me standing in front of the mirror, eyes completely black. I stopped filming after that, but it didn't stop watching. The dreams returned first. They came without warning, fragments of rooms I didn't remember entering, voices that whispered my name but never formed faces. I'd wake drenched in sweat, the echo of something heavy hopping just beyond my window. Even the air felt infected by the memory thick, unmoving, as if the night itself refused to breathe. I stopped going to work. The office lights hurt my eyes. The chatter of keyboards grated like insects, gnawing through my skull. My colleagues said I looked pale, distant, but their concerns sounded like mockery. Every reflection windows, screens, even puddles, after rain seemed to flicker with the faint shape of that thing in Qing robes, its silhouette bending, where shadows shouldn't bend. One night, I replayed the old camcorder footage from our so-called summoning. The tape glitched near the end, lines of static slicing across our faces. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing behind me tattered hat, long nails glinting even through distortion. I paused the tape. The image warped, the figure's face melting into blackness. When I pressed play again, it was gone. Sleep abandoned me. My apartment began to feel like a tomb, every wall pulsing with quiet dread, every corner stretching longer than it should. Sometimes I'd wake and find the lights flickering, the TV on by itself, showing only a blue screen. Once, I heard knocking not on the door, but from inside the walls. Measured, slow, almost rhythmic, like someone hopping. Desperation led me to research. I found articles buried deep in forgotten forums, mentions of people who called him and were never the same. Some posts vanished after I clicked them, leaving only black text on black screens. One entry, time-stamped. years before, mentioned a Jiangshi haunting in the outskirts of Senjin. A group of students found dead. Bodies drained of color. No blood. No explanation. I couldn't look away. The police reports were inconclusive, but one phrase appeared in each: residual kinetic bruising, consistent with repetitive blunt motion. My hands trembled as I read it, remembering the dull thud. Thud. From my dreams. When I closed the tab, my reflection on the monitor didn't disappear. It stared back, smiling faintly. I told myself I needed to see the place for closure. It was irrational. Yes, but something in me whispered that the only way to stop the haunting was to face where it began. The outskirts were quieter now, overgrown with weeds and stray dogs. The path to the old temple was half buried in mood, the scent of rain thick in the air. My camera lens fogged the moment I powered it on. The temple was nothing like the pictures online. The roof had collapsed inward, leaving gaping wounds where tiles once were. Moss covered the carvings, the air heavy with decay and incense, long extinguished. Still, the paper talismans fluttered faintly on the walls though stirred by a wind that came from nowhere. My flashlight flickered as I stepped inside. The floorboards creaked, echoing into a silence that swallowed sound. I called out just to prove I could, but my voice came back warped, distorted, as if the room were bending time. The beam of my light brushed over an altar. Dried offerings clung to cracked bowls, and above it, half buried in dust, hung a Qing dynasty robe. I felt my chest tighten. It was identical to what I saw in my dreams. I reached for it before realizing my own hand was trembling. When my fingers brushed the fabric, the air temperature dropped instantly. Breath crystallized before my eyes. A soft, wet thud echoed from the far corner. Once, twice. Then again, my flashlight flickered toward the sound. Nothing moved, only a faint trail of wet footprints leading behind a pillar. I whispered something, maybe a prayer, maybe my own name. The air grew heavier. My legs felt nailed to the floor. Then, from behind the pillar, something shifted, a slow, dragging sound, followed by a low exhale like wind through hollow lungs. I stumbled back, my shoulders slamming against the altar. The robe above me swayed gently, though no air moved. The smell of decay filled the room: iron, mold, and something sweet, like overripe fruit. My flashlight dimmed completely. For a moment, darkness was all I knew. Then I heard it. A hop, deliberate, uneven, closer than before. "Stop," I whispered, though I didn't know who I was talking to. My own breath came out in sharp bursts, fogging the air. The hopping stopped. Silence pressed against my ears, so low that hurt. Then, from the dark, a low rustling cloth brushing the ground, long nails clicking lightly like glass tapping wood. I raised my flashlight again. Its beam stuttered, flickering across the broken floor. The pillar was empty, but in the reflection of the cracked offering bowl, I saw a momentous shadow behind me, taller than any human, limbs jerking in uneven rhythm. My heart seized. Ispun, Aran. Nothing there. Only the sound of my own pulse screaming in my ears. I wanted to run. I tried. My legs refused. The temple's doorway looked impossibly far, as though the hall had stretched. I heard the faint sound of a bell jingling, then the whisper of something dragging against the wall. When I turned my head, the shadows behind the altar were deeper. They pulsed. They braided. I began recording again, desperate for proof. Through the camcorder screen, the room looked slightly different, darker, older, like the past and present had folded together. I caught a glimpse of movement in the frame, a blur of white and black, darting between pillars. When I turned the camera toward myself, my face was pale, but behind me, there was another outline. I froze. The image flickered. The figure behind me didn't move, but its head tilted slowly, mechanically, as though adjusting to watch me through the lens. I heard the faintest exhale, dry and brittle. My screen filled with static. Then the camcorder powered off. The silence that followed was suffocating. I tried to recall how long I'd been there. but my watch hand spun backward. Every breath I took echoed twice. Somewhere, outside, a car alarm wailed faintly before cutting off mid. I turned to leave, but the doorway was gone. Or maybe it was never there. The room seemed to close around me, walls bending inward like wet paper. My flashlight finally died. In that moment, I felt something touch my back. Not a hand too cold, too rigid. More lag bonnet. My body locked in place. My thoughts scattered into white noise. Somewhere deep inside the dark, I heard a voice that wasn't mine whisper, "I remember you." I woke outside. Morning. My car was parked nearby. Door open, battery dead. The camcorder sat on the passenger seat. Its screen cracked, tape missing. My clothes were damp, streaked with what looked like soil or dried blood. I drove home in silence, unable to recall the road, the turns, or how long I'd been gone. 4 days. I tried to piece the night together. I checked online again, but the old forums had vanished. Every link redirected to blank pages. My footage when I tried to play, it only showed a single frozen frame. Me, staring into the lens. Eyes, black. No sound. No movement. Just that hollow stare. Then, 3 nights later, I woke to the familiar thud ... Outside my door, I grabbed my flashlight, though I already knew it would flicker. The sound drew closer, slow, deliberate. My reflection in the mirror beside the bed shifted before I did, its mouth opening into a faint, strained smile. My breath caught. I whispered, "It's not real." But the reflection didn't echo me. It leaned closer, eyes black, nails tapping against the glass in steady rhythm. Then, from somewhere behind me inside the room, another voice, soft and cracked. It came back. The flashlight slipped from my hand. The beam rolled toward the door, illuminating the faint imprint of wet, mud-stained footprints leading inside. I took a step back, trembling. The air smelled of rot and old paper talismans. The footprints stopped at the edge of my bed. The sound of hopping began again, impossibly close.